Hey everybody, Spaceman Spiff here with episode 2 of my playlist Laddering 101. And in this episode I'm going to be featuring Orc, and we're going to be doing kind of the same thing as I did in the previous episode about Elf, but with a couple distinct differences because Orc is such a different race and I think needs to be spoken about in a different way. I'm not entirely sure I'm going to be taking the right direction. I don't want to everyone's familiar with the Blade Master, so how much do I actually have to talk about him? We'll see. But let me know what you think. Hopefully this is helpful. Either way, I'm just going to jump right into it. So as you can see, I have Turtle Rock as my map this time. There is a tavern, so that's awesome. And I've done the same thing. So I've taken my opponent down to 2 Moonwells. We're not even going to have an opponent in this game. It's just kind of base layouts. I'm going to talk about the race, what you can expect the race to be doing in the meta, at least the mainstream strategies, and kind of base setup, expectations. We'll see what happens, all right? But without further ado, I'm going to jump into it. We're going to use this base, but even before I start talking about specific races, I just want to say Orc, this is really the reason I have to approach it differently, is because Orc does the same thing in every game, at least to the untrained eye, right? Every game against every race, whether it be Undead, Human, Orc, or Elf, you're going Blade Master first. He's the hero of choice for Orc. If you're not going Blade Master first, then you are doing something outside the box. That's just the way it is. Every Orc player, typically, there are ways to skip the barracks and go towers or just straight tech, but typically you're going to see a barracks and you're going to see a couple grunts. There's some variance in there depending on the opponents and the race and the flow of the game, but you're going to see grunts with the Blade Master, and then hitting tier 2, you're going to see raiders, you're going to see spirit walkers, and you're going to see either a shadow hunter or torn chieftain. That's really what you expect to see every game, right? So it took me a while to kind of figure out how I wanted to approach this, because I don't want to talk about it too generically or make it sound like what I just said sounds bad, right? It sounds like Orc is just this stale thing, but the reason that this strategy works so well, and it's what Orc does all the time, is like it makes a lot of sense, and I'll get into it as we go on, but also the nuances in the build, the small differences between what you'll do versus a human versus what you'll do against an Orc make all the difference, and there are a lot of those, right? So I don't know if I'm going to be able to touch on them. I don't know if I'll capture that properly, but I'm going to try and talk about it a little bit at least. So that said, here we go. I have a level 5 Blade Master with some funky items and a grunt here already because I set up my base here. But we're going to do this base as against a Night Elf player. What are we going to do? Okay? So first off, against Night Elf, what are we expecting? Demon Hunter and Archers. He's going to be Ancient of War creeping, and you're going to be expecting him to come in at tier 2 with a Beastmaster and a Demon Hunter, and he's going to try and take down your tier 2 structures, right? Your Bestiary and your Spirit Lodge. The Elf's goal is to do the exact same thing as... Let me restart that, which is exactly what I was talking about in my Laddering 101 for Night Elves. They want to come in and do that, but you want to go in and cancel their wins as well, and you want to harass their tier 2 techs so that you can gain the upper hand. So you want a base that can buy you some time, because the Elf is going to try and be here harassing your Spirit Lodge and your Bestiary, and you want to be able to defend it pretty effectively, because if at all possible, you would also like to be in their base at the same time, trying to delay some of their structures, right? So, just like as an Elf player against Orc, as Orc, you need to build a base that allows for your tier 2 structures to go up safely, and I think the best way to do that is to wall off at least partially. So I'm just going to kind of throw it together and talk, but notice I'm building my burrow flush with the Great Hall here, and then I'm going to throw my altar here. Alright, so by doing this, I've got a wall off, right? This is a wall off. I have space here for a Spirit Lodge later, or a Bestiary, whichever I choose. And it's going to be really tough for a Night Elf player to get in there. If he wants to... Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's say... I'm going to build my Voodoo Lounge here, just because... build your Voodoo Lounge wherever it fits. Play your game. And then my barracks, I'm going to leave one space here and build right in that area. Okay? Eventually, you're going to get a second burrow and a third burrow, and I think it's a good play. This is how I like to build against an elf player. Doing something like this. Okay, and then let's say 10, 20, 30, 40, and then another burrow I'll put here. Because, no, don't put it there. That's a bad idea. Whatever. So let's say this is my base, right? This is good because, let's say you hit tier 2, and this is when the Beastmaster, Demon Hunter, and a couple archers show up at your base to cancel your structures as they go up. Let's say we have the Bestiary going up there and the Spirit Lodge going up here. So I had enough space to build them both safely behind my wall. And let's say the Beastmaster and Demon Hunter come in here, right? They come in this way. In order to get in to cancel either of these, there's only one entrance to my base, right? There's only one entrance. It's right here. No hero can get through this gap or this gap or this gap. Huntresses can't get through those gaps, although you're not expecting Huntresses. Archers, I don't think can get through the gaps, and you're not... No, archers can't get through the gaps, and archers are not going to do a burrow run by. That's not their play, right? What other elf units are there? Druid of the Talon can't fit through, but you're not going to see a Druid of the Talon run by on burrows, and Dryads cannot, Bears cannot. So this is a good, safe base to protect your back structures. Obviously, there's probably not going to be Bears and Dryads while your tier 2 structures are going up, but still, I'm just saying for the sake of illustration. Also, Quillbeasts can't fit through this. So by doing this, you're protecting your buildings, and it's still going to be problematic, right? The elf is still going to come in. He's still going to be dealing a lot of damage with his 2 heroes. If he's a strong elf player, he'll probably have Boots of Speed on his Demon Hunter, and he might even have a Staff of Teleportation or a Staff of Preservation, or both. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit. Let's say he has neither, right? Let's say he just overcommits and runs in to try and cancel with his 2 heroes. You just have to hold position any unit here, and his heroes are stuck in your base, right? They cannot get out. You can put units in burrows appropriately, you can repair appropriately, but he is stuck in your base unless you're able to move, or he's able to move your Blade Master, or your Grunt, or your Peon. Like these are all units that are very effective at doing this, and it's easy enough to do that, and that'll either force a teleport, or he's going to lose both of his heroes, right? So that's a great play. Generally, that's not going to happen. Hopefully, they don't overcommit that readily. But what was I saying? The more likely scenario is that the elf player has a Staff of Teleportation or a Staff of Preservation, or both. In which case, by doing this, you're not guaranteeing a kill, but it still guarantees that he has to stay in your base. It means you focus fire down the appropriate hero first, right? If he has only one of the items, then you take down the hero who doesn't have the Staff of Teleportation, because that makes sense. If one hero is holding both, then you're not going to be able to do much. But I don't know. See, this is hard to talk about. I don't know if this is really conveying anything valuable, but just ultimately pay close attention to the items on the 2 heroes as they come in. That will make a huge difference, and that will definitely dictate the play you make, because you have to be aware of what the elf is able to do, at least at this point in the game. The burrows being forward like this are definitely more vulnerable, but you'll have a couple peons working on lumber here, and it's easy enough to come down and repair. This one, make a point of having a peon or 2 here, and you can repair. And typically the elf is not coming in at this stage to cancel or destroy a burrow. They might cancel a burrow, but they won't come in to destroy a burrow. They're going to come looking for your tier 2 structures. So this is good. If the archers want to attack this, they basically have to come within melee range of the burrow to attack, and that's just a bad position for the archers, right? If the archers want to attack this one, it's still the same kind of thing. They line up maybe in this kind of area to attack the Spirit Lodge going up, and it's tough, right? It's not a great angle. He has to move his archers into this spot and then attack, and they're within burrow range. Your hero can do a lot of damage. That's not a good spot for archers to be. So I think this is a good base against elf. I think this is the kind of thing you want to do. It doesn't... As far as Bestiary versus Spirit Lodge first, I'm not sure really which one you want. I think you'll have to just look at how the game is going, see if you're in a good spot, see if you're behind by a bit or ahead, and use your judgment to make a call, because Spirit Walkers are really, really strong against elf players, of course, against Root of the Talon. You want to spell up as quickly as possible. So probably you would go for your Spirit Lodge first. I would get one Spirit Walker so that you have access to Spirit Link, and then I would research adept training, and then I'd get 2 or 3 more walkers, depending on how the game is going. But you want at least 3, maybe 4 walkers in your army of 50 of 50. You want to be able to dispel as much as possible, but I think you still get 1 Spirit Walker out first so that you have Spirit Link, because it's still really strong and important, because at this point you have a bunch of grunts and a Blade Master, and Spirit Link just makes them all survive longer. It's exactly what the Orc army needed. It's what the Frozen Throne introduced, and it really, I think it's great. I think it's a really cool spell and an interesting idea, and it fits the Orc concept really well. So you do that, and then with Raiders, of course, Ensnare is very important. Get Ensnare, get a Raider. I don't know if the order really matters that much, because ultimately neither are all that effective until you have both. But this is more or less what you're going to be going against every race, so I'm going to pump up to an army of 50 food just because why not, right? I'm never going to have to demonstrate anything else, at least for the opening games. Let's see, I'm going to go, how many grunts do I have? 3? I'm going to go a little Raider heavy and only have 3 grunts this game. So this is, damn. I screwed up. I'm supposed to have a Tauren Chieftain as well. So you get a Tauren Chieftain second against an Elf player, and you do that because Shockwave is so amazing against Druid of the Talon. And you're going to try and harass with your Blade Master, or scout with your Blade Master, or keep the Elf player distracted with your Blade Master while the Tauren Chieftain creeps to level 3. Because if you can get a level 3 Tauren Chieftain with level 2 Shockwave, you're in a really good spot. Now, one other thing that I want to talk about, and again, against all races, this is true. Against all races with this kind of army, that's what you're going for. I'll guess I got a Tauren Chieftain just to have him. Boom. So a lot of the time you still cap at 50 food. You always cap at 50 food, and then most of the time you'll see Orc players move out with a lot of their wood peons, right? They're obviously very effective with Spirit Link. It helps so much. How much extra health does that add to your army? 250 health for each unit, plus it clogs up the battlefield. It's more targets for Druid of the Talon to randomly attack and absorb damage and cast Fairy Fire on and waste mana. They're amazing, and it's a great play. And Orc are able to do this, I think, because they have so little... once they're established, once they have their tier 2 structures up and their heroes, there's not much demand for wood anymore, right? Spirit Walkers cost 35 wood. You're getting some grunts. You're getting Raiders 40 wood. So maybe another burrow for 40 wood, but you're really going to start stockpiling wood, right? You're going to have more income than you need if you have the standard amount of peons that one would have playing the game. So by pulling them off, you pull them off because that's very, you make use of all the food limit you can and get the health in there. But it's kind of interesting because it's not like Orc players are ever loaded on gold, though, right? Because you still have to spend your gold, and what do you end up spending it on? It's items, because Orc is so item dependent. You need, let's go with the Blade Master, you need Boots of Speed, you're going to need Healing Salves all game, you're going to need Clarity Potions all game, you're going to need maybe a Staff of Teleportation on your Tauren Chieftain. You're also going to need Healing Potions and Mana Potions and Invulnerability Potions. You're going to need Healing Scrolls, lots of Healing Scrolls, Scrolls of Protection. All of these things cost just gold. So that's why I think a lot of the time you see Orc players pulling their peons, not teching, not going for an 80 of 80 army, because they don't really ever at any point have... They don't have... How am I going to word this? They don't have enough cost-benefit ratio from going 80, because they need that gold income, because that supply of items needs to be constant. if you see top replays, you see that a Torn Chieftain is buying items all game. Like, he comes out and he's buying items. The amount of gold that goes into a Torn Chieftain and a Blade Master is crazy. So you take off your wood, you stop going wood, and you try and just keep an 80 of 8 or a 50 of 50 army, keep them alive, good micro, and spend all your gold income that does remain, that is not being matched with wood, on items. I think that's how Orc plays. I think that's what you want to do against Elf. I guess that's probably what you want to do against most races. But this is more or less what you're going to see, what you expect to see, how you want to play the game. I don't know if this one's great, but that's that's my kind of summary there. I'm going to move on to the next race, which is against a human player. Okay, and I think you want to build your base a little differently against a human player because, well, let's say, what are we expecting from a human? He's probably, I think the most common thing against Orc is to go a tier 2 tower push, like the sky push tier 2 strategy, or maybe going for a fast expansion. Those are the two things you'll see. Both are very effective, both are tough to deal with, and either way, as an Orc player, you're expecting to see an Archmage and Footmen coming in to harass your tier 2 structures and your burrows. Just like an Elf player, just because they know this strategy that you're going, this standard Orc play, is so vulnerable at that point in the game. So you're still expecting that tier 2 harass. However, this is not the base you want to have to deal with it against a human player. Because, let's think about it. We have Footmen and an Archmage with, let's say, level 2 water elementals. Footmen can fit through all these things, right? Footmen can just easily walk through and cancel this structure if they want. They can easily walk through and surround this burrow. With Defend, it's really tough to deal with as an Orc player. You have to have your Blade Master and units in position to deal with it. So, by doing this, you're not really hindering the human player all that much. His army can still get in and do anything he wants. An Archmage can stand here and summon a Water Elemental to get into the back of the base. Water Elementals are great for taking down burrows as well and absorbing damage. And I think this is actually very vulnerable to a human push because he can come in and easily focus these two burrows in particular, and these will go down to Footmen if he wants, and there's nothing you can do about it. All you've really done by creating a base like this against a human is minimized your ability to move around your base. It's like the human now has free reign and you are stuck with just this one passage. And that's no good because, of course, Grunts, Raiders, Spirit Walkers are all in the same boat as heroes. This is the only way they can pass through. So against a human, I tend to make a little bit more open of a base because, like in the Elf one I posted earlier, you want to be able to run around and push and pull and buy some time against humans. So I'm going to build something like this. I'm going to put my burrow there. Should get another peon out. Let's say I put my barracks here. I'll put a Voodoo Lounge. Like, this is probably not the greatest base. This is not the perfect example of what you would want, but it still is going to illustrate my point. I don't know. This is 1, 2, 3. Okay, we'll do this for now. This will illustrate my point. Let's just teleport over here because this is the army we have. And with this kind of base, for a human to come in, he has to really commit to get to your burrows, right? Oh, that's why I forgot about tier 2 structures. So you would have chopped down this tree so you could build a bestiary here. Yeah. Oh, well. I've kind of screwed myself. I apologize. This is not great. No, that's not going to fit. Okay, but you try and do something more like this one where they actually fit behind your base. So I have not done a good one here. You want... I'm sorry I did this, guys. I'm sorry I did this. Alright, but either way, it still kind of illustrates my point. For the human player to get to your burrows now, he has to really commit and get in here, and now he's like way in the back of your base, and you're able to come in and harass. Granted, you do not have this army, but it's more of a commitment than the human player focusing this, right? He has to go all the way back here. Your Bestiary and Spirit Lodge are going up back here as well, safely. So it's still like he has to commit to get in, and he's still able to get to them, but what this does is it allows you to move around so much more effectively, right? I can't believe I built this base wrong, but you want to keep that open, and you want to be able to move around your base as freely as he is able to move around your base. And by doing this, you allow for that. So if he comes in this way, you can attack, you can pull back a bit, you can attack, you can micro your units to the back of your base. That's another thing, is Orc, you never want to fully wall off because you want this safe place for your units to just heal and benefit from the healing salves and the clarity potions. So you never ever want to wall off completely as an orc. It's just it blocks too many units. It's not worth it. But by doing this, you always have somewhere new to run your grunt, right? Let's say you heal your grunt and you bring him up here and the human player's chasing you, trying to kill it as it's healing. You come down. I haven't built a stupid base, and you are able to run south like I want you to be able to. Then he comes down here. You always have another path, right? As opposed to this base where if my grunt is healing here and a human player comes in, I've got nowhere to run. I'm stuck. If this weren't here, though, the grunt could go around and dance this way, and you just have that maneuverability, right? It opens up space, and that's really important against a human player, at least in my opinion. You're still going to be going the same kind of units. You're still going to be getting a second hero, but you'll get a Shadow Hunter, not a Torrent Chieftain. And this is because Hex is great and Healing Wave is great, and you don't need Shockwave really against a human. There is merit to the Farseer Torrent Chieftain strategy where you go Chain Lightning, Shockwave, but I don't think that's enough in the meta anymore to really discuss. I think that's definitely out of the box again these days. So you're going these units. You want to definitely be on top of your opponent. You want to scout him. You want to be on top of the Archmage at all times. So you want to see if the expansion's going down and deal as much damage with your Blade Master and Grunts as you can early on. You want to creep a couple key spots. Like on this map, you'll creep for the Circlet here, or you'll go for the quick Ogre Magi kill, get that item in the Sentry, and then go out and harass from there. There's variance, and every map's different, so I'm not going to talk about that. There are other players who are definitely better able to talk about that stuff than me. But you do that, and then you want to go and harass, because the last thing you want is a human player to be able to fast expand uncontested. That would be awful. You want to put as much pressure on, kill as many militia, just make them spend as many resources as possible to set that up. And if the human player is going for the tier 2 push with probably second hero Beastmaster, and it's lots of summons, along with casters and a tower push. I think that's a common strategy. I think it's a very strong strategy. You want to be able to scout that as quickly as possible. You want to know that human player is coming for you from right here. Like as he leaves his base, if you see it coming, then you can get in position. You can start building a tower or an offensive burrow. I don't think you should build these burrows forward, but if you know a push is coming soon, or you're now feeling safe and we're into the mid game or late game, I think this is a good burrow, because this burrow now, once you're beyond the point of the common footman harass and it's into big armies and actual gameplay, now this is not as high priority a target, and you have position to attack spellcasters or the towers that are going up. So I don't think you should build the burrow out this forward early, but later on this is a good position because now it can attack. Again, I would still try and leave it open a little bit, because also when you're having that tier 2 push coming your way, you are going to be taking a lot of damage on your units, and you want to be really micro intensive with them. So you want to be able to use your speed scrolls, because slow is so hard to deal with, and speed scrolls counteract that, and run your units back into the base. And if your unit's here and you just click here, you want it to just run the best path. You want it to get there as quickly as possible, and it doesn't matter which route it takes. It's going to be hard for the human to chase into it, or right? As opposed to here, if I'm here and just right click there, the raider's going to run down and up. I want him just to be able to quickly go. I want that free movement. So yeah. That's, I think, what you want against a human player. This way also, if towers are going up, you can take damage, come back, heal, go back in, take damage, heal, do that. You can't do that as much here. If you go in and take damage, let's say he has towers here. If you go in and take damage and then try and run this way, you're taking way more damage. All your stuff is in danger, and it's trouble. You want to be able to take damage and run up this way to heal. You want your units running straight north with your healing salves, not along the tower line in north. I hope that makes sense. So that's what you want against a human player. I think that more or less sums it up. Healing Wave, you want to spam. You don't need to get Dispel. Well, no, you do. You want to get Dispel really quickly. You want to be careful about using Disenchant, though, because if you cast the Area of Effect, you're also going to be disenchanting Spirit Link, so that's also against Elf players as well. You want to be careful. Try and use it sparingly. Try and definitely use Dispel against Elf players on on Cyclone. As soon as he Cyclones your Blade Master, Dispel. That's what you want to do. And against a human player, you're using Dispel to counteract slow, but you also want Spirit Link working. So you've got to use your timings properly. Maybe wait for him to cast a bunch of slow, then disenchant and Spirit Link, and then he's going to cast a bunch more, and you're going to have to, get kind of a rhythm going or something. But that's how you play it. I think that more or less sums it up. You're going to use your hero to focus fire down whatever weak unit or vulnerable unit is nearby. It'll go hero sometimes, but it's also important to target spellcasters if they're vulnerable, or even water elementals if they're vulnerable. Just the Blade Master hacking away at anything in the human army does a lot of damage. So you just want to buy time and deal damage with your Shadow Hunter if you can, but really, it's just a long, drawn-out fight with the Blade Master trying to run amok. That's I think, the goal against human players. Let's see, what's the third race? Let's go Undead, okay? This is not the base you want against Undead. This is not the base you want against Undead. Because Undead, let's say, you still want to build your Tier 2 structures further back. You don't want it out here like this one, because this is super easy for any race to come in and cancel while it's going up, right? So you still want your buildings going up back here like this, but you don't want your burrows forward, because let's think about Undead for a second. Typically, against an orc player, Undeads are going Death Knight and Fiends, right? It's very rare that you see ghouls against an orc player. These ghouls are just so vulnerable to a Blade Master. Like, it does happen sometimes, but I think Fiends are the play. You more often than not see powerful air out of that. So you see statues, you see a Lich second, you see destroyers or frostworms. That's really what you're expecting to see. A third hero will be a Dark Ranger, which will be used to silence, and there's going to be a lot of nuking, a lot of pressure on your heroes, and a lot of kind of easy pickings, I think, for, like, grunts go down so quickly, especially if frostworms are out, and destroyers eat the magic of Spirit Walkers, and then they have extra magic damage, which is so powerful against orc. So that's what you're expecting to see. And if we think about the opening, at least, Death Knight and Fiends are not like an Archmage and Footman, or not like a Beastmaster and Demon Hunter. They are not able to run deep into an enemy base, right? If my buildings are going up back here, he doesn't want to line his Fiends up into my base, or he doesn't want to run up this way. He doesn't want to overcommit his Death Knight into my base, because they're not that kind of unit. They're kind of, like, they deal a lot of damage, they're easy to keep alive, and they're tanky for ranged units, but they can't dive bases. They don't have that kind of versatility. And a Death Knight is definitely not what a Beastmaster and Demon Hunter combo are for taking out Tier 2 structures, right? So if you're seeing a harassment from an Orc player, especially around that time, he's going to be taking out your more vulnerable things so he can stay at a distance. So the Fiends will instead line up here and go for the burrow, or they'll line up here and go for the burrow. So you do not want burrows forward, especially early on against an Undead player, because those are its primary target. And even into the mid-game and late-game, burrows are going to be primary targets for an Undead. So you want to build them a little safer, a little further back, so I think this is definitely the kind of thing you want to do against an Undead. You also want to have your Spirit Lodge back, your Bestiary back. Let's say that I did this the first time. So that he still has to commit in a lot with his Fiends to get to them, but your burrows are not vulnerable, because that's I think what an Undead's primary goal is. I don't think an Undead really expects to take out your Tier 2 structures. Oh, that's weird. But an Undead definitely is going to come for burrows. So don't build them forward if you can help it. Build it back, build an open base still, because it's the same kind of thing. You don't want your grunt to be taking damage and then you send him back to heal back here, and he runs down here and takes more damage from these Fiends and dies. You want to be able to have the grunt take damage and run up, or take damage and run up, or take damage and run this way, up here, around that way. Just any route you want. You want all those available paths, so if he's taking damage and you want to heal it, you've always got an option to, like, turn this way and buy more time. So this is what you want against Undead. Still, you're going to go Blade Master, Grunt Raider, Spirit Walker. I think there's variance here. I've seen people go for tier 3 and get fortified burrows, which is great, or fortified defenses, which is great to deflect those destroyer or frostworm attacks to just take out your burrows really quickly. Orb of Lightning is great on the Blade Master when you're fighting these air units, these heavy air units. Now you've got that DPS on air, and you've got Purge, both amazing. You definitely want a Shadow Hunter second because Healing Wave is great to counteract the nuke. Hex is great for focusing down enemy heroes. You can focus a Fiend and Hex the Death Knight so that he can't coil it. So the Shadow Hunter is really effective there. Gives way more control in those smaller skirmishes than a Tauren Chieftain. A Tauren Chieftain is a big army hero. A Shadow Hunter is much more flexible. I don't want to say a small army hero because the Shadow Hunter is great in big armies, but the Shadow Hunter is also great in these small things because of Hex, which, you know what it probably is? It's probably because the Shadow Hunter has a single target spell, and single target spells are good in small skirmishes because there are fewer number of units. And the Shadow Hunter also has an area of effect spell, which is very powerful, so that's why he's good in big battles. Tauren Chieftain only has area of effect spells or an aura, which is kind of like an area of effect spell. So he's good in these big battles, right? So I think that makes sense. I think against Undead there are a lot of small things, not a lot of big battles, right? There's a couple grunts and raiders ensnaring fiends and like 4 fiends and a Death Knight Lich trying to nuke you down or pick off a raider here or there. So Shadow Hunter is definitely stronger in that instance. Also, you have, I guess, an air attack in the Shadow Hunter, but you're not relying on a Shadow Hunter for damage output, so that's kind of questionable. So this is what you expect to see. Also, if you are going into air, definitely orcs these days are getting a couple headhunters, mixing them in. That's extra damage output. That is very high damage output, but does not survive well. Hopefully, though, with your big army at this point, they're not a priority target. There's just so much else going on. I feel like if you go for those headhunters too early, like if you want to mix in your headhunters and still stay under 50 food, then they're just fodder. So you have to be careful with that, but headhunters are definitely good to mix in once you have a bigger army and you're fighting these bigger fights. Spirit Link is always good. I know Grubby popularized getting a Witch Doctor early just so you can drop a bunch of sentry wards and control the map, but I think that's typically what you want to see. What was over here again? Against human, no, you don't even see headhunters or anything like that. Against elf, you might see headhunters, but generally not. Let's see, the last race is orc. It's going to be this exact mirror match. I think you want the open base again. So really, I think you only want the walled one against elf. You can make a case for the walled one against orc. I guess it's probably playstyle because, yeah, it's playstyle. This space is good against orc if you want to defend and be able to wall off and trap people in. So that's great. Not as great for defensive microing though. This base is better for defensive microing, for keeping it open, and if you're not as much worried about harassment. So I guess use your discretion, but this is what you're going. This is the unit combination you're going. You're getting a Shadow Hunter second. You need that Healing Wave. You need that sustain. The Blade Master first for that damage output, and it's just like, it's a intense micro battle. Use the Spirit Link effectively. Use good ensnares. It's really a grindy battle, right? That's about as long a battle as you're going to find in Warcraft 3. An orc against an orc doing this kind of thing. So I don't really have a whole lot to talk about there. So what I do want to say though before I kind of start wrapping this up is the reason this is why this is what orcs go every game. So let's think about headhunters. There are out of the box strategies for everything I'm about to say. So don't think I'm just saying finite, but on the top level in pro games, you never see headhunters early just because they die so quickly, and they're a little better than archers, I guess, but they cost more resources, they require extra tech, and they're just so vulnerable. They're so vulnerable. They're slow. Archers at least have hide. Archers have moonwells for that quick healing. Headhunters don't have any of that, and you don't generally want to use healing salves on headhunters either because they have so little health already, and on tier 2 you can research troll regeneration, which kind of replaces that. I don't know. I think headhunters are too vulnerable. Against elves, they're not going to be effective against archers and demon hunter. Against Undead, they're just going to die so quickly to the nuke. Against Human, they'll just get defend anyway, and now your base is much more vulnerable than if you had Grunts. And against Orc, the Blade Master's just going to melt them, right? It's not going to work. That's it for Tier 1 units for Orc. Tier 2, you get the Raiders. Oh, sorry, I never mentioned Kodo Beasts once. Kodos are amazing. You get Kodos once you start jumping over 80, 50 food. I don't think you necessarily want them in the 50 food army. Probably don't, but once you get higher, you do. A big role, though, there are games where Orc versus Orc players get a lot of Kodo Beasts and use Devour. Also against Elf in those bigger ones, Devour is great against Bears. So I'm sorry, I forgot to mention Kodo Beasts, and they do have a role, but I think they come later in the game, and once we're talking later in the game, that's just too big to talk about. There are too many variables, there's too much. But once you do start going above 50 food, I think Kodo Beasts are great, and they have a good role in Elf and in Orc games because they can devour Grunts or Raiders, or they can devour Bears, which is so effective. Bat Riders are great if you're dealing with, fairy dragons or something, but not something you're going to see in the mainstream. And Wind Riders, so let's talk about them. I still call them Wyvern. I'm going to continue calling them Wyvern. Air unit with high damage output, but super vulnerable, right? So you've got, let's say, against Elf. If you try and do Wyvern, you're against a Demon Hunter who will have an Orb of Venom soon, Beastmaster who has Quill Beasts and maybe a Hawk, and Archers and Dryads or Archers and Druid of the Talon. Wyvern just melt. Like, you can get some nifty harassment in, you can maybe catch them off guard with a quick push, but what Elf are just naturally doing in the meta smashes any attempt at Wyvern. If you're against an Undead, Web is just too powerful. Those are you're gonna have a similar number of Wind Riders to Fiends, and they're just gonna get melted really quickly. It's really hard unless you have a really big army to do well with Wind Riders against Undead. Let's see what are our next ones. We've got against Orc, Ensnare is so effective. Burrows mean you can't really harass an Orc base, and and now all of a sudden your army's not tanky compared to the standard Orc army. This will destroy an Orc who goes for Tier 2 Mass Wyvern. Like, this comes in, Ensnare and good use of your heroes and spellcasters and getting more raiders out. It's not going to work. At that point, the Orc player will also get some headhunters, and Wyvern are just vulnerable, and these are an air unit. You don't mix in just like two of them, right? It's not like Elf would go 2 fairy dragons and that's it, and that's a nice supplement to their army. For Orc, you never see an Orc go 2 Wind Riders. It doesn't work. If you're going them, you want to get a lot of them for their damage output, but they just die too quickly against the same problem as Headhunters. What was the last race? Human. Spellcasters, Water Elementals. You can try some sneaky stuff with Wyvern, but really a good human player can just completely thwart you like it's nothing. So there's not really a huge role for Wyvern in the current meta either. And then let's say you go Tier 3. Wow, look how long this is taking. That's ridiculous, and this is just Tier 2. Oh, I apologize. You get Tier... Oh, I didn't do these units. Spirit, like I said, Witch Doctors do have a role, but Healing Wards are so easy to just dispel, especially at the top level where people have good APM. And Stasis Traps, same kind of thing. You might catch them outside of battle because you place them preemptively, but in a fight, they take too long to take effect. They're great at average level plays, but at top tier, they're really tough to make work. Shaman, same kind of thing. Typically, Purge and Lightning Shield, you don't even see. They're really hard to use. If you're going Shaman, it's primarily for Bloodlust, but that doesn't work in the meta because it means you have to go for Tier 3 quickly. It means if you're against Bear Dryad, then they just dispel it. If you're against Druid of the Talon, then you're going to lose that fight because they can just keep your heroes in the air and melt everything. Bloodlust is too slow to work against Elf going Druid of the Talon. You need some tank in there as well, and the Grunts just aren't going to do it. It's not going to work. Against Undead, Devourers are just too powerful and straight in the meta. Against Human, you're not going to have time, and Spellbreakers just counteract Bloodlust immediately. And against Elf, I did Human. And against Orc, it's too slow. Your opponent's just going to have a bigger army early, and they're going to roll you over before you hit Tier 3 and have the time to research Bloodlust. let's see, and then you go tier 3, and the last unit you get upon tier 3 is Tauren. Well, or Tauren, I should say. I don't even have a Mormon. But the problem with Tauren is you have to go all the way to tier 3, and then you have to build this huge structure that takes forever, and then you have to build a Tauren individually. It's different from Elf going tier 3 melee, right? Because they can build their Ancient of Lores early, so as soon as they hit tier 3, they already have 4 bears ready to go. They just have to research Master Form, which is a really quick upgrade. For Tauren, you have to build a Tauren totem, which takes like, I don't know the build time, but forever. And then you have to build a Tauren. So the amount of time before you get your tier 3 melee unit is so much longer than the amount of time before an elf has their tier 3 melee unit. Or if an undead's going abominations, those slaughterhouses are already set up. So that's a problem. Another thing with Tauren are you have to get pulverized, right? That's a lot of wood, and pulverize is another long research time, and that's, you know, Tauren are still good without it. They absorb a lot of damage. They're tanks, but damage output from Tauren is critically dependent on pulverize. So that's another additional research you need to have for Tauren to really fulfill their role. And if you do that against an elf player, he's going to beat you because he's going to have 4 bears while you're building your first Tauren totems, or your first Tauren. If you do it against an undead player, Frostworm's Destroyers, straight up undead strategy, melt Tauren. If you do it against a human player, Spellcasters Destroy Tauren, also comes online way earlier, so they'll easily be able to get an expansion up or something. And what's the last race? Horde. And they do this and mix in more Kodo Beasts, like I said, and just devour every Tauren, and done. So Orc is tough, right? Because of the status of the current meta, there's not much else they can do. They have to do this. This is the only way they can contend with the other armies. And it's really good, but like I think that, like, I don't know. I don't know what needs to be done or what could be done to shuffle it up, but it's kind of fallen into this role because there's nothing else that's really effective in any spot. This is just so much versatility in this. Raiders, when used effectively with Ensnare, are the amount of control you gain from that far outweighs the gain of a Tauren over a Raider, right? Like that extra health and damage output does not match a Raider coming out way earlier with Ensnare. Spirit Link is available immediately as opposed to Purge, which is, you know, you have enough mana to cast it once. That's not even going to kill a level 3 water elemental. Or Sentry Wards of Witch Doctors, which are great, but they're not going to affect the battle in those early skirmishes. Right? And then Disenchant comes on level 2, which is so critical. But yeah, Stasis Wards, they're slow. They don't really help early. Lightning Shield is like, yeah, no one ever casts Lightning Shield. There's no way you can justify Shaman as Lightning Shield, I don't think. Maybe you can use it effectively along with other stuff, but no one goes Shaman for Lightning Shield. So it's like, I don't know. This is how, either way, this is Orc. This is, I think, what you want to do. These are the concepts you want to keep in mind while playing Orc. You want to get a lot of early items on your Blade Master and harass, and as soon as your tier 2 hero comes out, generally you want to be keeping the opponent busy with your Blade Master while creeping up your tier 2 hero with this kind of unit composition. And then once you're at 50, you either expand or you hit or you figure something out. But that's how you play. So thank you for watching. I feel like this one was definitely not as organized as the Elf Ladder 101. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you think. Thank you for watching either way. If you liked the video, please like it. If you would subscribe, I would very much appreciate it. Either way, again, thank you for watching and have a great rest of your day.